Hey everyone, I received an interesting comment on this blog defending Sabine Hossenfelder and determinism. Let's have a look. The commenter states that my video misrepresents determinism. He goes on to ask for some evidence. If I know of an event that cannot be ascribed to prior causes, then provide it. After all, the onus is on you. Next, he asks for something special about the human brain. If I know of something special about the human brain, then how did it evolve? Where and when did it evolve? And then he finishes up with something about solipsism here. So this argument from solipsism doesn't work. It's just an argument from incredulity. Never mind whether or not you understand the science. Okay, so a hard-hitting comment here. What's going on here? Well, before I get into the details, I want to say a word about Charles Darwin. We need to go back and look at his 1859 book on evolution. In chapter 6, he talks about difficulties on the theory, and he begins with a statement, "Some of these difficulties are so grave that to this day I can never reflect on them without being staggered." So he admits these are grave difficulties, but very quickly after that, he follows up with this statement that, well, but they're actually not fatal to my theory. Darwin is making an important pivot here. He's framing science not as the pursuit of theories that are true, but theories that are not false. So that's what he's going to be arguing. His theory is not false. Those problems are not fatal to my theory. Skipping down, if it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed, which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. Now, this may sound generous of Darwin, but look at his criteria, what he's asking for. You have to provide evidence of something that could not possibly have evolved. Darwin is arguing that his theory is not false. Skipping down here, although the belief that an organ so perfect as the eye could have been formed by natural selection is more than enough to stagger anyone, on the other hand, there's no logical impossibility of it. So again, Darwin is arguing that his theory is not false. Following this, in the cases in which we know of no intermediate or transitional states, we need to be very cautious in concluding that none could have existed. After all, that's what we need to come up with. If you can prove that none could have existed, then okay, my theory is false. But otherwise, it's true. Darwin argues here that his theory is not false. Moving down here, Darwin argues that we're really too ignorant about this anyway, and we really can't be concluding that this could not have happened, that these complex structures could not have evolved, just because we're too ignorant. Could not have been. That's the key phrase here. Darwin has a high threshold. You have to falsify his theory. Darwin, again, is arguing that his theory is not false. Or in other words, if evolution is not proven false, then it's true. Darwin is using a clever rhetorical trick here, but it is not science. This is a logical fallacy. It's called shifting the burden of proof. I don't have to prove that my theory is reasonable. You have to prove that it's false. Now, the fact is, Darwin's theory has failed. This website looks at 22 fundamental predictions of Darwin's theory that have all spectacularly failed. Should we really be surprised? I mean, Darwin's theory is rather heroic. It states that the entire biological world arose by itself. It's a very heroic theory, and the science simply does not indicate this. So, by shifting the burden of proof, Darwin makes a ridiculous theory true by default. It isn't science. Now, with that as backdrop, let's go back to this comment that we have. The commenter states here, if you have any examples of events that cannot be ascribed to prior causes, then provide it. Let's look at that. Cannot be ascribed to prior causes. Sound familiar? The onus is on you. This is the exact same kind of rhetorical trick that we saw with Darwin. Stand up a ridiculous theory and then demand that it be falsified. It's true by default. Then down here again, the human brain. If you know that if you think there's something special about the human brain, then why don't you just tell us about that? And how did it evolve after all? So note the rhetorical trick here. We need to explain how it evolved. Not only is the burden shifted to the skeptic, but the skeptic needs to explain how it evolved. So what is determinism again? Let's review that quickly here. Determinism is a lot like evolution, determinism entails evolution. If determinism is true, then evolution must be true. We got a problem right there. Determinism states that everything arose by natural law. So let's have a look here. So on the one side we have natural law, on the other side we have everything. So let's map this out here. What exactly are these natural laws? So just as some examples, you have the universal law of gravity. Force equals the first derivative of momentum. Masses have an equivalent energy. There's the electrostatics, there's Schrodinger's equation, etc., etc., etc. There are dozens and dozens of these natural laws. As you can see, they're rather simple. They're fundamental. These are the fundamental natural laws. What do we have in everything? What's in this column? Well, there's the bees and birds and every musical piece that was ever composed, every piece of literature, everything Bach and Beethoven wrote, all the works of Shakespeare, etc., etc. These natural laws are supposed to have created everything. There's no scientific evidence for this. This is not indicated by science. It's not science. This is not the only problem with determinism, as I've reviewed in several videos. So let's just review that first. Determinists claim that determinism is true. It's a no-brainer, no question about it. Science has proven it. There's beyond reasonable doubt. Well, the first problem is that that claim is self-contradictory and delusional. If determinism were to be true, then we would not know it. We could not know it. You cannot make that claim. That claim is self-contradictory. Next, there are these entropic obstacles we just looked at. These fundamental, simple natural laws are supposed to have created all of the complexities of the world. This is really kind of silly here. Next, we experience free will. You can say it's illusionary. It's all an illusion. That's what the determinists say. Well, maybe, maybe not. But we have this experience. All the determinists say is that, well, it's an illusion. That's a bare assertion. There's no evidence to back that up. Finally, science does not explain many things anyway. It's not as though we have this oracle called science that is just explaining everything, and there's no reason to question these natural laws determining everything in the universe. So we have these fundamental problems. It's really kind of silly here. So we're in this weird kind of a conundrum here. How can we explain smart people believing in foolishness? Now, when I say smart people, I'm talking about extremely smart people. And when I say foolishness, I'm talking about extreme foolishness. This is really a serious conundrum. How do we explain this? I only have one explanation for this. It's in the Bible. For example, here we have in the book of Isaiah, the wisdom of the wise will perish. The intelligence of the intelligent will vanish. Religion drives science, and it matters.